Hey everyone, Laz here. Welcome back to the Real Talk podcast. If you've been here from the start, you already know that this is a space for real conversations. No masks, no pretending, just the whole hard truth. And today, on episode 3, we're talking about something that we all carry. Whether we like to realize it or not, we all carry armor, the emotional kind, and the kind that protects us but also distances us from who we really are. This episode is about the masks we wear, why we put them on, and most importantly, how to start letting them go piece by piece. So let's jump right in and get into it. Now, let's all be honest, right? We've all said, I'm fine when we weren't. I know I'm guilty of that for many years. We've all smiled through the pain and kept going when we needed to rest. Guilty as charged. And lastly, we've played the part, even when we were hurting inside. Now, the $1,000,000 question we always seem to not ask ourselves is why, right? Why do we do this stuff? Taking a wild guess, at least for me personally, is because we're taught early on in our life to be strong, right? To hold it all together and to not make others feel uncomfortable with our own discomfort. And that's crazy. Crazy to hear, but it's true. We perform, we push through things, and we pretend. And guess what? Over time, our pretending just becomes normal, becomes like another day. And we start to think we are our own mask. And with that, let's call out some of the most common ones. And I'm not here to shame them, I'm not here to make fun of, I'm just here to talk about them. Because once we talk about them and we start naming each mask, we can start to let them go, right? So the first one I talk about is the achiever mask. The one who's always productive, busy, and on top of everything. But behind it, they're the fear of being seen as lazy, they're weak, or just simply not enough. Now, we all know that one person might be yourself, might be a family member, or might be a close friend. They always have to be busy, they always have to seem productive, because internally, if they're not, they're going to be thought of as lazy or weak. When in reality, let's be real, no one cares. At least what I think, right? The next one is the caretaker mask. The one who's always helping others, but never talks about their own needs. And behind that person, right, there's that fear of rejection or fear of being a burden, right? And a lot of us can relate to this one. Maybe not fully, but there's always something where we fear of that rejection, right? Well, if I don't help a family member or if I don't help that friend, are they going to just not talk to me anymore? Or am I going to think, we're not helpful? All these thoughts start rushing through your head. I know for a fact they do for me. Then there's the happy mask. The guy or gal who always smiles and jokes even when they're falling apart in their own mind. And behind that person, they avoid conflict, they avoid discomfort, and anything or any issues are all avoided. They just want to keep smiling, keep moving, because if they don't, they know there's going to be some conflict that they just simply don't want to deal with. Which honestly, thinking out loud and talking out loud, individuals are willing to sacrifice themselves for someone else. And lastly, the lone wolf. This individual handles everything solo, doesn't ask for any help, nor thinks that they need any assistance ever. Now, behind that person, they have trust issues. But in addition, they have that fear of abandonment and a fear of appearing vulnerable to others, especially to family members, especially to their close friends. So, what do? Can't rely on anyone else, don't want to rely on anyone else. They just do it themselves, no matter at what cost. Now, personally, for me, I feel like I have a layers of mass on all these, right? I feel like I can relate. The achiever, always being productive. I feel there are points of my life I was like that. The caretaker, the helping others. Chapters of my life, that was my priority. The happy mask, I've been there. I understand how it is to always smile and joke and make fun and make light of things when in reality, just life was just being life behind closed scenes, right? And lastly, the lone wolf. I've been there as well. I can relate. I'm the type of person that doesn't want to ask for help at times. Now I've grown and I'm matured, and I don't see asking for help as a sign of weakness, but it did take a while for me to come through and recognize that. So, you know, if any of these sound familiar to you, if you're like me and a couple of them kind of blend in, what are your thoughts? I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that. Now I know, right, wearing these masks have helped us survive and helped us push through scenarios, push through situations. I get that. But they've also kept us from being seen, from kept us really showing our true colors and regardless of what cost. And what I mean by that is most of us don't just wake up one day and decide to hide, right? We learn to do that, whether it was maybe in childhood, maybe it was a trauma in your life, maybe it was a cultural or family dynamic, or maybe someone taught you both indirectly or directly that, let's be real, your emotions, those real things that you feel, were just too much to handle, too much to process, and became that quote unquote inconvenience. So, what do? We built that armor, we built that fort around us. And that armor, it kept us safe. It was our safety blanket, at least for a while. But guess what? That same armor that protected us, it also isolated us. You can't connect deeply when you're covered up with armor. And you can't feel free when you're always guarding yourself for every step of the way. Now, as we talk about and as I get real with you all, for the longest time, I know I touched upon it earlier, but the longest time, I personally wore the I got it all together mask. I was always smiling, always handling it, always getting it done. I never let anyone see through the cracks, see behind the smile. But what would that get me? The truth was, I was exhausted. I was numb. I felt like I was running on fumes. And lastly, I was just disconnected from myself and everyone around me. Why was that, you might ask? I simply thought being vulnerable meant being weak. And now I know, fast forward many years later, that being real is probably the strongest thing I've ever done. And it's not easy task. And every day there's a new challenge. Every day there's a new push, but it's the strongest thing I've ever done. And I don't regret it at all. The moment I started to remove the mask, little by little, life got heavier. As you can imagine, emotions start to roll in. But then it got lighter. And then it got real. And then I felt different. I felt free. So let's talk about how we can start removing those masks, because obviously it's a process and it's not a flip of a switch as much as we'd like for them to be. Now, the first step to that is awareness. Ask yourself, which of these masks do I wear the most? And what does it protect me from? Be honest, be truthful. No one's going to know except for yourself. A wise person once told me that as much as they wanted to help, as much as they wanted to participate and get me to be in a better position, they will truly never know what I was going through if I didn't let myself be honest and vulnerable. So ask yourself that. Second step is just start safe and start small. What I mean by that is choose one person to truly open up to and be honest with, whether that's a spouse, a brother, a sister, a parent, a best friend, you name it. Choose one person, share one truth, and let's be real. You don't have to go deep, fast. You don't have to talk about everything at once, but just be honest. Be honest, be truthful, and start to share and showcase your feelings. The third thing, embrace discomfort. Yeah, it's going to feel weird, maybe even scary, but don't confuse discomfort with danger. Your nervous system just isn't used to it yet, and that's okay, but that's going to change. And in order for you to get comfortable into your own peace, into your own well being, you're going to have to get uncomfortable, and that's okay. But that's a step that I wish I would have taken sooner, but I'm glad I did. Next up, make space internally for you to feel what you're truly going through. So sit with your emotions, dwell on them, think about them, understand them, and realize that not every feeling that you feel needs to be fixed. Again, it's not going to happen overnight, nor with a flip of a switch. Some things just need to be felt and understand where they set or stand in a priority scale. And lastly, celebrate the truth. When you show up as yourself, even just a little bit, recognize yourself. You deserve that recognition. Because guess what? That's courage, that's growth, and that's one step forward from your past. And if you step forward, you're one step forward from leaving your past in the rearview mirror. And that's all ultimately you want to do. And with that, here's something a bit wild, right? The biggest thing I thought of in my journey and I recognize and I still go back to, right, is that most of us just want to be loved and just accepted. But we hide the parts of ourselves where we think we're too much. We always ask, how can we be loved for who we are if we never show who we really are? Real connection doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being honest with yourself and honest with others. So when we remove that mask, we open the door to being seen for who we really are. All the good, all the bad, all the perfects, and all the imperfections. We're opening the door to be seen, not just looked at. We open the door to real relationships, deeper conversations, and more meaningful lives. We find that purpose with just being honest. So here it is, to stop performing, to start getting curious about what you really are carrying, and to slowly start gently taking off the layers and the masks. Because you're not broken, You're just tired of pretending and performing a show for not only yourself, but for others. And underneath that mask that you wear day in and day out, the real you is still there. Whether you know it or not, you're still whole, you're still worthy, and you're still enough. Even if you have to dig deep and find that in yourself. Now, I know last week I introduced the Real Talk Challenge. Again, whether you do this, you follow it, you do it, or you don't, I think it's a great opportunity for you just to simply reflect and write down any masks that you've worn or think about them. And also think back to when you first remember putting that mask on. And then lastly, ask yourself, what would it feel like to take it off? That freedom, that nervousness, that confidence back, all those emotions are real. But how would you feel? Even if it's just for one day. You don't have to live without them all the time, but you deserve to know what freedom feels like. So, with that, thank you all for showing up. Thank you all for being here. I know episode 3 in this podcast, it was a bit heavy, but to me, it was a freeing one because you get to understand who you are as a person, who you were as a person, and most importantly, who you're going to be in the future. So remember, the armor, it served its purpose with you, but you don't need it forever. You're allowed to be seen, you're allowed to be real, and you're allowed to simply be, just not perform day in and day out. So if this spoke to you, share with a friend, share with a family member, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, and all social platforms at RealTalkLaz. And come back next week for more of that real talk. And if you haven't heard it today, I'm proud of you for showing up, for going deeper, and for taking that first or next step in your life to be better. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day. Talk soon.